Brent and I are related, in some sort of distant
So
way.
I want.
Yeah.
You need a genealogist to tell you exactly what your relation is. So if you're like
How many steps
second
removed?
cousins 3 times removed,
Yeah,
or
right,
something
right.
like that.
I just want to be heir to the vast Schoonover fortune.
Yeah.
The
Frank Schoonover fortune.
Yeah, right. Mary's about to join us here.
All right.
Yay!
Look, Mary, you can tell Mary has been preparing for people visiting.
Obviously.
It looks like, I don't know, it's almost clinical. It's so clean.
How clean it is? Well, I think it's more. I wonder if it's just contrasting with the abject messiness that it's been for the past 3 or 4 months. So anything looks better.
I'll leave that to you, but I mean, wow. I'm impressed.
Thank you.
Fabric is hiding everything in my place, so.
Yes, well, that's why I have the power of whatever I want to put in the background. And
so Mary, this is Brent.
Hi, Brent. So nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. I hope you were. Someone said you were showing off your apartment or something. I don't know if there's a move or.
Yeah, kind of. So our landlords are selling the building, and I was taking a nap.
Nice.
And was unexpectedly awoken by strangers in my apartment.
Oh, isn't that pleasant?
Oh, really?
So, yeah. This happened a little while ago. So not only did I have to quickly put pants on.
I was just going to say, I hope you had your pants on.
I definitely did not.
Oh.
Jeez.
That's
but
too bad.
Yeah, it was a panic, just hold on.
Wow.
So, and the cat almost got out. So it was,
delightful.
It was nothing like a little excitement to get your blood flowing on Monday.
No kidding. Welcome. I'm sorry, I can't get that out.
Welcome.
You could do the Dracula. You could do the Dracula welcome.
I'm flashing back to the episode that comes out Wednesday morning. These two basically paid verbal grab ass for an entire hour.
Oh, it was so funny.
But anyhow.
Funny for us, anyway.
Yeah. Dave was sitting there like, I don't know what to do.
That's right. Let's try this again. Welcome to the Monster Movie Happy Hour. I'm Dave Geister, one of your 3 hosts. Who do we have here tonight? Let's see. I see Mary Chowman.
Hello, I'm Mary Chowman. I am a historian and farm mama and comic book enthusiast, and really excited to talk to our guest today.
Excellent. Then we've got, as always, Mr. Scott Cheeseborough, resident-ologist, and as I said in a recently recorded episode, I'm a man without portfolio. Therefore, that's what I'm going to stick with for a while. It just sounds more distinguished than saying unemployed.
You are an estate haver, as we have established.
He does have an estate.
Yes.
This, folks, is one of our Monstrous Musings episodes, and typically, we don't cover a movie in a Monstrous Musing. We give Mary useless life advice, which she generally chooses to ignore. But more importantly, we often have a special guest, and we are very happy to have Brent Schoonover, illustrator, artist extraordinaire, and we're going to pick his brain for a little while. So, welcome, Brent.
Hey, thanks for having me. I've been a big fan of the show for quite a while, so this is I'm pretty excited to be on.
Well, thank you. Really, seriously, it's a pleasure. I got the impression years ago, largely through Facebook, that we were all sort of monster kids at heart to one degree or another. And so you are a perfect fit. But backing up to something we were talking about before we started officially recording, you are not from the Twin Cities.
No. I grew up in a small town in Illinois. I loved drawing, and I feel like that I was like the only kid in the class that really liked doing it. I graduated with 36 kids. It was a very tiny class.
Sure.
And like they were like, we don't know what to do with this kid. And so like they gave me murals to paint. You know, every school got a mural, even though I wasn't a very good painter. They were just like, let's let them do something. And you know, as I got older, my older brother and I, we would go into Chicago to the Chicago Comic Con. And I just was a big comic book fan. My brother was a comic book fan. And going there as I was in high school, there was a table set up for the Minneapolis College of Art and Design. And they had a whole thing about you could go for a comic book degree. And it just blew my mind. I was like, what? There's a degree in comics you can get? Like,
yeah, seriously, I'll be honest, Brent, that just blew my mind.
yeah.
Even
and so,
is that really what the degree says?
What's that?
Is that really what the degree says? Does it say a degree in comic book illustration?
Yeah, there is. Yep.
Really? Wow.
Now, I actually ended up double majoring in just regular illustration and comic book. So my actual diploma just says illustration on it. So I was pretty mad. I was like, I want that comic book one.
yeah, right.
Yeah. And so, but no, it just, they had a really nice setup. They had some of the students who were actually just a couple years ahead of me down there talking about the school, and I just became infatuated with it. And I did apply to a couple schools in Chicago, but they just didn't quite hit it for me. I went and you had to get an apartment outside of the school. They didn't have any housing on there. MCAT had student housing, which kind of like, you kind of wanted some of that. I kind of wanted some of that college life, even though I always knew art school was not going to be like, you know, university kind of stuff. And so I really, I came up here and I fell in love with it. The school, and so I moved up here in the early 2000s and started attending school. So, and I never left.
Hooray!
That seems to be a common thread with people who move to Minnesota from other places, that you get here and then it's like, this is my place now.
I know it is.
Yeah, as evidenced by our Mary Chalman who came here.
Also not for school, but after graduate school, I work in museums and sort of kind of knew Scott and Dave, and came up here to do a museum event in the midst of grad school and thought, I could totally live here. Yeah. And after grad school, got a job and came up here, and now they're stuck with me forever.
Hey, we're delighted.
Happily.
Yeah,
I always enjoy because there's a comic convention at the state fair every year. It's 2 days, and they bring some people in, and I always try to help curate people that they should bring in. And I like to host, and I like to take them to places and stuff. And it's so funny because like people do really quickly either like, I could live here, or they're like, no, I'm good. Like, thanks for bringing me here. Thanks for bringing me here when it's not snowy. I have no interest in that. So,
Do you have a favorite artist that you've brought to the state fair that you are like a huge admirer of their work and really enjoyed having them? Or does anyone stand out?
You know, that's funny because like they're all sort of mutual friends. So like their artwork is like an appreciation with, but like there's a guy named Jeff Parker. I did Batman 66 with him for a while.
Oh, cool.
He came up and he actually started talking about, he was writing the comic book Batman 66. And he was like, man, you could really do a cool Batman story, you know, with that giant slide and all this kind of stuff. And so, you know, his gears kind of got going a little bit, and unfortunately it never quite took off. But, you know, there's a lot of artists I would love to bring. It's tough because the convention that we have is, it's a great show, but they don't really, in this day and age, like there's so many comic conventions that like guys are getting paid appearance fees now and stuff like that. So there's certain guys who I'd love to bring, but in sports, I know what they cost to get here. And they don't quite have it. Now, thankfully, there's a new show at the convention center called Galaxy Cons that they just had their first one last November. And they bring in pretty big names. Like the whole cast of Guardians of the Galaxy was there this last year. Oh. And so it's celebrity and comics. I think they do a good balance of them both. So that show might be able to bring in some of the guys who I really like. Oh my God, I'd freak out if you got to come here and stuff. But thanks to COVID, we never know when we're going to have another show. So, you know.
I have a dear friend of mine went to GalaxyCon the first year. I'm pretty sure it was GalaxyCon, and got to meet the cast of Doctor Who.
Yes.
And it was like the coolest That was her like splurge for the year.
Yeah.
It was like the coolest experience. She got to meet everybody and just she had a wonderful time. So it made me really excited to go to GalaxyCon in future years.
I've gotten to be friends with the guy who runs the show because he's ran a few of them in the past that I've gone to, and they always gives me a free thing to go for whatever celebrity to get a photo and stuff.
Oh, cool.
So I did not tell. We had a group of friends that were walking around, and I did not tell them that we had a setup with all of the cast of Guardians of the Galaxy. We were getting our photo taken with them.
Oh,
And
man.
so I was like, just follow me. And like, we just got to cut through everybody in line, which was really fun. And then they just like turned the corner, and for about 4 or 5 seconds, we got to hang out with them. And then it was like, on your way. And but we got a digital print of the photo, and it was really fun. And
That's great.
So,
That's great.
Yeah.
the shows are fun. I love doing shows. I really miss it. Like they put on a show in Louisville, Kentucky a couple years ago, and I got to hang out with the cast of Monster Squad, this 80s movie.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We know that movie. Yeah.
Wolfman's got nards.
Yeah, and they are so fun to hang out with. Like we went to this after party, and we all hung out for a while, and just talking and just having drinks with the cast of a movie that movie was like me. Like it was like
I was gonna say, you are the right age. You're like the perfect age.
Yeah.
You're able to appreciate that.
Everything about it. Yeah, I just loved it. So I was like, I couldn't believe I was getting to hang out with them and stuff. And so it was really fun. And
I love stories like that.
Yeah, I got to meet the guy. I cannot say his name, but he's the last surviving person who played a Universal monster. You guys just did.
Creature.
Creature from Black Lagoon, the guy who was played the creature from the Black Lagoon. Underwater.
Is that Rico?
Yes.
Yeah, Rico Browning.
Browning. Yeah.
Scott, didn't you meet him?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
He's unfortunately like he's not the most social at this stage.
No, he's pretty taciturn.
His wife or
I don't
his
know anybody
daughter.
like that.
His daughter was at one though, and I talked to her, and like he had all these 8x10s of like behind the scenes where the monster's kissing all these women off camera.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, you got a lot of these. And apparently his wife said that you can smooch anybody you want as long as you're in that suit. And so that was like a running gag that he just would tell the actresses in the movies that he's like, I can kiss anybody I want as long as I'm in the suit. And so he always had like whoever was doing publicity for Universal taking these pictures so he could show his wife. And now, 70 years later, he's got
like he would bring up these pictures, and she was like, "Oh my god!" Like,
yeah, right.
Another.
Yeah, I get it.
Then you just have to watch where the hands are placed.
Right. So
Look at Mary. Oh dear.
yeah.
Oh no,
It's
that's
a different movie.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't. Oh, wow. I wasn't getting that.
No, Scott and I were supposed to go.
Yeah, no, it's
We were supposed to go to Monster Palooza in May.
oh my God. Yeah.
We would love to take in Mary, but Mary doesn't like us that much. So.
I would have loved.
I know
to
you
go.
would have. Mary's one who has a quote unquote real job, so she can't just leave
For now.
For now, right? For another 3 days? No, who knows?
Yeah,
Or 30 years.
I think Mary has a real job going
She
for
does. So we're hoping that next year, because I think Son of Monster Palooza has now been canceled. Is that correct?
That's
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah,
Yep.
I mean, it makes sense given everything that's going on, but
Yeah.
Well, fingers crossed, I would say a year from now things will be available, but we'll see.
A couple of my friends were turning 40 in the last year or so, and that was one of the things that they wanted to do as a discussion was go out to Monster Palooza. I've never been, and that just I follow it on Instagram, and I just
Yep.
get like envy. Like all my DC, a lot of my editors and friends that work there live so close that like they're all just go there like no big deal, whether it's Son of Monster Palooza, and they're just like, it's no big deal. And I just get so jealous of all the stuff that they get to go see.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, to be able to see some of the great monster makers of our age there,
Right.
and literally doing their stuff in front of you, or
Sure.
just seeing the vendor. I mean, you name it. So many things.
Oh, Dave and I could talk endlessly about. There's a guy, and I wish I could remember his name right now, that does these essentially lifelike statues of
Mike Hill.
of like classic Universal monsters. And there was one that we were marveling over that was there's a statue of Yul Brynner from the original Westworld movie with the faceplate moves aside and you can see everything inside. And we later found out that they had used that in one of that figure was way in the background in one of the warehouse episodes in the Westworld series.
Funny.
Oh,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, I like that. I like that crossover. We could go on this path for ages, but we should probably take advantage of the fact that Brent is here. And I would like, you have done so many, I think, unique projects. I mean, I'm looking at my desktop here, and it's like I'm seeing, some Evil Dead here. I'm seeing Vincent Price over there. Could you sort of walk us through a little bit of your connection to the horror genre in terms of, actually, let's step back in time. I mean, you mentioned Monster Squad. What is one of those early movies that as you look back now, you say, I think that was sort of a turning point, or that sort of explains partly why I like what I like now?
Yeah. Well, when I was a kid, we had Uncle Don's Terror Theater on Friday nights.
Okay.
It was really goofy guy. He looked like a used car salesman. He just had this dusty old recliner, and he had like a shark puppet that would pop up. I don't know. He wore like overly nerdy glasses with the taped together in the middle. Yep. And he just had all these film canisters, and he would just throw film canisters. And it was a horror host, but like he didn't have the horror slant. He was just like a dorky dude watching movies.
Yeah.
But, like, it always was like Night of the Living Dead was on there. That was like the first movie I really remember watching, and my dad was watching them with me. And so, like, I was young, and so like. Okay,
so here, this is always the crux. How old were you? Probably.
I was probably 6 or 7. And
go.
So, yeah. And so I just, you couldn't go anywhere on Friday night. You didn't care, and so my dad would like let me stay up at least, and he'd stay up with me for a little while, and then he'd probably go to bed, and then it was so every week it was something. But they actually played. And that's the problem. I can't remember if it was him or if it was Rhonda Shear Up All Night on the USA Network.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
She used to play, like, Jason movies and Return of the Living Dead and stuff like that. So there was always, like, a horror host to some degree on TV. And I was actually just talking to my friends about this, about, like, what was I doing watching Jason movies at that age? But I was like, oh, they were edited for TV. So I feel like, you weren't getting everything and stuff. But, like, now, like, my 2 daughters are really like, we want to watch all these scary movies, and like, you kind of got to be a little. They don't have edited for TV movies really anymore, so you kind of got to be a little. Like, we watched Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, the new Guillermo del Toro.
Oh, how was it?
Oh, I loved it. I saw it in the theater, and I was like, the theater would have been too intense because of the sound and the score and stuff. Yeah. But like, I'm like, maybe back at home it's not too bad, and it was pretty good up until the red room scene, which I don't want to give everything away. But
I don't think any of us have seen it yet, have we?
No. It's all right. It is. There's nothing violent about it, but it's just scary as hell. And I had to stay in her room till about 1 a.m. And I got her real good. But like, it was like the least scariest of all the stories that got brought to life, but it was the one that stuck with her the most.
Oh, sure.
And I loved it. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, speaking of Minnesota artists, the original artist who did the illustrations for Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark is from St. Paul.
Yep. I got to visit him in his studio one day.
No way. I mean, I've met him at book events, but I've never been to his studio.
Yeah. Okay. So jumping a little bit, but I went and I took a children's book class when I first got to MCAD. Yeah. And my teacher, she just was like, we were just talking about those kids' books that influenced us. Yep. And I brought those in because I've always had the same copies I've had forever. And she just like had this $1 million smile the whole time I'm talking about them. And I'm like, what's going on? She's just cheesing in the background. Right. And she goes, hey, if you can make it over here, we're studio neighbors over in St. Paul. And I was like, what? And so he goes, yeah, I can probably set you up with a day you can go over there and hang out with him. I didn't have a car when I was at school, so I was at MCAD. I walked all the way over there, and I walked all the way back to MCAD.
Yeah, but
I did not care. I don't even know how.
I'm sorry, you were saying?
I don't even know how long it was, but I didn't care. But it was an amazing day. He was not the most talkative, but
no, he's not.
No, and he does not like talking about those books at all. Because
Really?
I brought him up, and he was just like, you could just see the life kind of zap out of him when I brought him up. And I didn't know, but then there's a documentary on those books about how much shit that they had to go through with those books, and the books were getting burned by librarians and stuff. There's a cool documentary about him, and then after I watched that, I had no clue, and now I know. I'm like, he probably went through a lot of crap, especially trying to rehabilitating his career as an artist, in terms of getting work and maybe royalties on other books. And so I do get that, like, why he definitely went in a different direction from those books after that were done. And
it's truly unfortunate because they are so evocative. And for those who are not aware, we're talking about the artist Stephen Gamble.
Yeah,
I don't think we mentioned his name. I should know better. But that's curious. I've never really been able to talk to him about that. He was at a book event or two, and we both have a mutual interest in the Civil War, so we talked about our Civil War book and a few things. But yeah, he's kind of in his own little world there, and he didn't really. Whereas the rest of us had to get up and talk to the public, he sat in the back of the room and refused to come up.
Yeah,
and but what a really cool style.
Yeah, it's so unique. And I was just really lucky, and I really owed my teacher a debt. That was like one of the first times I'd really gotten to sit down and be with somebody who was like an influence or an inspiration, and so it was
it doesn't always happen, does it?
Yeah, and so it was really cool.
And I was curious, as far as since you've done a lot of comic book work, is there any comic book illustrator that, or more than one, that you find that was an influence? Or
when I was young, growing up too, the Tales from the Crypt TV show really came out at a great time for me when I was really young. And so all of these reprints of those kind of came out.
The really old stuff.
Alden Books at the mall.
Alden Books. Oh my goodness. I forgot about those guys. Yeah.
And so I would just go there, and they had these really cheap reprints, and I just thought they were the coolest thing. And so a lot of the EC comic artists were like really early influences.
Oh yeah.
And then I really got into the Batman the Animated Series in the 90s. There was a guy who did that called Bruce Timm. And through that, I learned about a guy named Darwin Cook, who was working on the show, who was an amazing comic book artist. And then I just kind of started learning what their influences were, because I got some really nice information early on, which was like, find who influences you and find who, they influence them. And then you start coming up with this artistry of what makes them and what makes you. And it was really cool. And so it was funny because like a lot of those guys were influenced by the EC comic artist and Alex Toth and all these other. And so it was, I definitely learned that I was finding people who drew with kind of like a cleaner style were really my interest, in kind of almost animation. Because for a while I thought I was going to go up here and go to school for animation, because you kind of get told that's the best way. If you draw, that's the best way you can make a living. And I took one animation class, and I was like, F this. Interested. And I felt so bad because I would watch these animators go, and they would, you'd go to MCAT, and they're just, back in then, like, not everybody had a computer. So you would have these computer labs, and they were just like, they lived there. Like, they'd have Dorito bags, and they were just like, they just started setting up shop, and they would have all their Diet Mountain Dews and stuff. And they're like, they're not going anywhere for like 4 days, because they would render whatever they were animating, and then they would show it, and it was just like 8 seconds of like a plant growing, and it was like, you've poured your soul into this, and like everybody's like, I was like, I don't know, I'd rather be like an editorial illustrator or a comic book artist or anything, but I just can't see myself slaving away for that much work to just see a plant grow. I just couldn't do it. So.
You get very little immediate gratification when you're animating. I just limited experience working on the stop motion movie I've got going on in my basement. There's a reason it's not done, because 5 minutes in, maybe 2 or 3 minutes left to go, and it's like, oh my God. Yeah. I mean, once you get that far along, then you see results. But still, woo.
Yeah.
It's solitary. It's solitary work. It does not get much more solitary, to the point where you can't even necessarily even have music playing, because you've got to think about every little tiny little movement you're making.
For sure.
So I'd say you made a really wise choice, because your work is outstanding. I mean, it really.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
It truly is. I get a kick out of the fact that for the longest time now, I've been bumping into your work all over. It's like, oh, are you shitting me? He did that too? It's like, this is so cool.
Son of a bitch.
No. In fact, now I take.
That's me and Adam Turman. I always text him. I'm like, you son of a bitch, you got that job.
Perfectly natural, but it's like now it's like I take sort of like ownership whenever I see your work. It's like,
yeah,
Brent Schoonover. I know Brent Schoonover.
That's cool. Well,
anything to name drop, I'm immediately there. Can you talk to us a little bit about the Vincent Price piece you did?
Yeah. So the first comic book I did was a creator-owned book called Horrorwood with my friend Brandon. We got out of MCAD and neither one of us had a job. I was working at an art supply store on Lyndale Avenue. We just had a lot to time to kill. And so
that Art Materials Inc.?
Yep. Yeah. I worked there. Yep. I used to sell one of the guys from one of the local bands. Now I'm totally drawing a blank because Misery Incorporated was one of their songs.
Okay.
God, I can't think of it, but there were a couple of celebrities in there that I've sold some art supplies to that I was pretty stoked about. But we did a comic book called Horrorwood, which was sort of like a love letters to like Vincent Price books or movies, and it went okay. Like, we just learned how to make a comic book, and once that was done, though, I had it and I was just handing it to editor after editor to try to get more work. And there was this company that had the right to Vincent Price, and they were making like kind of like a classic Tales from the Crypt style comic book, but Vincent Price was going to be your host. And so I was like, oh my God, I got to send them some stuff. And I seriously remember emailing them at like 6 o'clock at night. And then I went to my studio after dinner to try to work that evening. And the editor had already written back like, hey, do you want to do an issue? And I was like, great. And I was like, do you have a story ready? And he goes, oh no, I just assumed you would write and draw one. And I was like, oh, you write and draw too. And so I did this story about it takes place during like the classic radio, like the era and stuff. And so it's like kind of like it's like a Benny and Betty kind of, like lovers quarrel kind of TV or radio show.
Yes.
And they're about to replace the husband because he's just getting old and he doesn't have it anymore, and they're gonna have a new love interest. And so he goes crazy and he's doing like these radio spots for commercials, and like he's recording them, but it's actually his inner monologue starts telling him to kill the new guy and all this. And so it's kind of a very weird thing going on, and I'll have to send you guys a copy, but
we'd love that, man.
I don't have too many of them left, but the drawings are rough as shit because they're so like, it was like the second comic book I've ever really done.
Hey, that's fine.
The coloring's rough. I can't look at it and like love it, but I do love it because I got to do it. And so, but I did get a really cool, Vincent Price's daughter was overseeing all of it, and she wrote a note in an email that how much fun she had reading this issue.
Okay,
it was very short, but I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, so this is what's her Victoria.
Victoria.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, seriously, we would love to have it on our shelves in whichever part of the Deep Dark Lounge now has a bookshelf. It keeps moving. Hal Jr. screws with us constantly. So
I keep seeing and hearing about this every week. It's very
I don't know. I didn't even know how much
you should have such problems.
Yeah. Hal is not our friend.
Hal Jr. is the reason 2020 went the way it did.
Yeah.
Oh wow! I never knew that.
Oh no, I'm convinced Hal Jr. is partly behind this. What about the Evil Dead work that I'm seeing here?
That stuff came through. It was just an editor who I'd gotten to know through the company called Dynamite that has their license. And I'd always sort of just thrown in. I was like, I'm a big fan of the book. And they were trying to get me to do a series, but I was actually on Captain Marvel at the time at Marvel. And unfortunately, that paid a lot better. And so I was like, I can't do it, but I could do covers. And so it was crazy. The first one, I actually, I was in Chicago for a convention, and the editor was there, and he goes, "Hey, I got you a cover gig for Army of Darkness." And I was like, "Great." He's like, "The problem is we need it by Monday, end of day." And it was Saturday night at the bar. And I'm like, "Oh." And so I'm like, I don't actually get home from Chicago until like 5 o'clock on Sunday night. And so I actually had to hook up with a colorist who was in a different country. And so I could like draw it late at night when I got back and then hand it off to him in a server. And so I went to bed at like 2:30 in the morning that night with the line art done. Yeah. And then when I woke up the next morning, it was already done and ready to go. And I was like,
were you happy with the results?
I was really happy. I'd worked with him before, and so it worked out. But
that's great. But that turnaround is crazy.
It is.
But I'm sure that's not the first time somebody's dropped that kind of bomb on you before, right?
No, I mean, it happens here and there. I always wonder why it happens. Like, like if you knew you needed a cover, like, why are you waiting till this late in the game? But
you're waiting until 4 days before the cover's due.
Yeah. But it was a fun book because the whole story took place where Ash was going back to his hometown to be a substitute teacher because the Deadites were infesting, and so the school, and so he kind of had to be a shop teacher, which was kind of fun. So everything kind of like the first cover was like a Breakfast Club movie.
Yes, I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah, we saw that one. Yeah,
it's really cool.
So, and I tried to pitch. I'm like, we should just do 80s teen movies, like cover homages. They were like, no. So they didn't want it. I think
if they had known Stranger Things was going to be a deal, man.
I know. So, but so it was really fun and getting to play with that. Though I have to say, I love Bruce Campbell, and I haven't never met him, but I've seen him at a lot of conventions.
Yeah.
He is very particular about his likeness, and there was like one cover. It just like would never die. It was just like, he doesn't like this. He doesn't like, and I'm like, and like this point, it's like his head is like this big in the background for something, and I'm like, come on. So he's still picking on it, and
picking on it.
Yeah. So
but that also means you've arrived, man.
Yeah, lucky.
No, it's so lucky to have Bruce Campbell complain about our likeness. So
it was cool, but like you'd be ready to go out for beers one night with your friends, and all of a sudden you'd be like, "Well, Bruce Campbell," and I'm like, "Well, I'll meet you there. I gotta go mess with this guy's chin." What's that?
Fix Bruce Campbell's face.
Yeah. So,
well, I think they look really pretty cool.
So Brent, how many over the course of your career, how many hero type comics have you illustrated for? Or
well, man, it's so I was doing, when I first got into comics, I kind of was doing creator owned. I did a book called Horrorwood, then I did the Vincent Price thing. I did a graphic novel series called Astronaut Dad, which was about the space race in the 1960s, and it was about like reserve astronauts. And so I did a bunch of, I did end up doing Toy Story comics for a while, which was, it was cool. It was fun. Like, I wish I had some copies of them still to give to my kids now, but I was on the outskirts of it for a while. And then I did this book. It was kind of like a love letter to Dick Tracy, but it's kind of weird because it came up through Zachary Quinto, the guy who played Spock in the new Star Trek. He funded this weird Dick Tracy gets old and evil book. Wow. And so I did this book with him and a co-writer, and we went out to San Diego and I met him and hung out with him, and doing signings with Zachary Quinto when he's playing Spock is one of the craziest things that has ever happened. I don't think I've ever signed more books than with that situation.
Yeah.
But that one really kind of got some attention though, which was good. And so it took a good 8 years doing comics before I ever got an actual Marvel and DC job.
Sure.
And it just so happened that an editor at DC saw the book. He really liked the retro look that it had, and he was looking for someone to kind of draw a retro Superman story. And so I got a Superman story with Batman in it. So that was my first job, which was
Wow, that's pretty impressive.
And
That's pretty cool.
and yeah, it was really fun. And from there, I got to do Batman 66 for a little bit. And then it's kind of funny because it feels like once one of the big two, DC or Marvel, hires you, the other one's like, oh, okay, you're cool. And then they did like the other one, it's like, I'll give you a job too. And so all these years trying to knock on their door, it felt like they both were instantly like, oh, you're okay now. And so I jumped over from after DC stuff kind of wrapped. I did a fill-in on The Punisher with a friend of mine named Mitch Gerrits, who used to live in Minnesota. And he's like super awesome work. He does Mr. Miracle, this great book that if you guys haven't heard of it, I really recommend checking it out. It's an amazing book. But let's see, I did Punisher, and then I did Ant-Man for a little while, which was super fun. If you had told me like when I was a kid or like a couple of years before, like you're getting to draw Ant-Man, I would have been like, I must have pissed someone off at Marvel. Like that was not a cool assignment to get. It was not one of their good heroes. But I was getting the gig right as the movie was coming out. And so that was like super awesome and really fun. And the story was really, really great, the way their approach to it. It felt really like the movie felt, which was really fun. And then after that, I did a book called Howling Commandos of S.H.I.E.L.D., which was...
Yeah, I've read that one.
It's pretty... like all these Marvel monsters get a job at S.H.I.E.L.D. to form a super team. Yeah. And it was like a job I never knew I would want because I didn't think it would ever exist. And it was so much fun. It was... None of the characters were like probably the big name superheroes, but like they were all like weird ones that I always had a big affinity and affection for.
Yeah.
And so that one unfortunately didn't last terribly long. And then after that, I jumped into Captain Marvel for a little while.
Yep.
And I stayed pretty busy at Marvel for like the last 5 years or so. And then I could just kind of start to tell, like, not that like they were booting me out or anything like that, but I kind of felt like I needed to reinvent myself because when you stick around for a while and you don't have like, things were good, but like I didn't have like a big hit. You know, they kind of keep trying new people, you know, younger people. I mean, every year there's new people getting out of art school or there's just other people in different countries. And I just kind of felt like I needed to go away and reinvent myself. And so there's a writer in town named Benjamin Percy who has been working at DC for a while doing like Green Arrow and stuff like that. We met at the local convention and we just got talking and we both really realized like we like true crime podcast. We, you know, certain things are just really in sync with each other, having a couple beers and kicking things that we like and stuff. And so we're always, I don't know if you guys are familiar with a crime series comic book called Fatale by chance. There's a writer named Ed Brubaker. Yeah, Mary knows what's
I've
up.
heard of it. Yeah, I'm also a true crime junkie and weirdly
Awesome.
listening to lots of true crime in 2020.
Yes. Yeah. And so it just was one of those things, like I've always kind of wanted to try the genre a little bit in comic books, and there's not a lot of crime comic books out right now. And so Ben was actually just getting started on something at Marvel with the editor-in-chief. His name was Axel Alonso. And he did this Ben wrote this Wolverine podcast for Stitcher. And it's really great. And
I've listened to that. It's fantastic.
Yeah, it's kind of done like a true crime. It's kind of done like a documentary style.
It's great.
I love it because it's like Wolverine's sort of like this background character in the shadows that you don't really know. Yeah, and I kind of thought that was a cool approach because like these superheroes are always in your face now and stuff. And I think to remind people of like if they're creepy or you know like they pull them back a little bit and don't always make them the main character.
Right.
And so he did that, and I thought that was really, really smart. And so the editor, Axel, was just like, well, we got to get you doing more Marvel stuff. And so just as they were about to let us pitch something together, Axel, the editor, got let go at Marvel. And so it was kind of everything was in flux. And so we didn't really know what we were going to do. Yeah. So we started developing this crime comic together called Devil's Highway. And as we were doing that, we were probably about 4 or 5 months and we were waiting hear from some other publishers about picking it up. Axel reached out to us about that he was forming a new company called AWA, and there was a really great opportunity for creator-owned books, and he wanted to know if we had anything, and so we pitched that book to him, and he loved it. He just was like, I got to have this. And so that's the current book I'm working on right now, is called Devil's Highway, and it's
fantastic.
Yeah, we really enjoyed it.
Yeah,
Oh,
I am
you.
so excited to read the presumably once a month, right?
Yeah, it came out the first July 1st, and
yeah. So now we got to wait a month to get the next one. Damn.
Yeah, I could maybe help you out with that.
No. I'll be honest. I like the fact that I have to wait. It's
Okay.
in this day and age, and I'm sure I'm not alone in feeling or saying this. Isn't it kind of nice to have to maybe wait? You know, you build this anticipation.
Not in the binging there. No,
maybe
I love it that you have to wait, because like working so hard on it, you don't want it like and have it all out and done right away. So it is fun to be able to have it come out and stuff. And we hear people's reactions really been fun. It's been getting really well reviewed. I was a little worried how a crime book that was a little bleak and maybe not the most upbeat was going to go over during COVID. Cause like, I just feel like for me personally too, I feel like I'm not watching as much horror movies and stuff right now, just cause I don't know, my brain just kind of needs to have something positive.
Well,
But
Mary's making up for
it.
it then.
See, I'm just
Mary's kicked into overtime on this stuff.
Whenever hard times happen, I find horror cathartic in a way. So I immediately go towards gothic. Lately it's been slashers. It's very strange, and those are the things that are like that I'm finding to be really interesting, cathartic.
I am normally that way 100%, but for whatever, I think it's just with not to get crazy into it, but whatever, everything that's been going on in Minneapolis too a little bit right now, I'm just kind of like Parks and Rec, take me away a little bit.
Can I ask you, where in Minneapolis are you?
I say Minneapolis, but I'm a liar. I live in Golden Valley, so right on the outskirts of Minneapolis. So, but
I mean, you can't live in the Twin Cities and be entirely immune to everything that's happened here.
I will say, as much as I say I'm like not into the horror stuff, I did just get a giant Halloween flag that will wave in front of my house. That it's got orange and black stripes, and then where the states are supposed to be, it's just the jack-o'-lantern. And so
that's very nice.
It was like total like Facebook ad. I'm like, this is for you. And so
man,
like, all right. I can't leave it too much, but I don't know. So, but go ahead. Sorry.
Well, no, I was going to get back to Devil's Highway. That is just. That's nightmare fodder there. That's really effective.
Yeah.
Your style, man.
Well, thank you. I tried to change things up a little.
Words, I really like this a lot, and I wonder if you could maybe, without spoiling anything, just give a few of our viewers or listeners just a taste of what it's about.
Well, its story sort of centers on this girl named Sharon who comes home. Her dad has recently been murdered in like their family diner, and it sort of seems like a robbery gone wrong. But she's been gone for a long time. She's kind of had some family issues with her, but she's back, and she has some military training that we don't quite give everything away right away. Yeah. And she picks up that there's something bigger going on than this was just a robbery gone wrong. And she starts doing some digging. And she's starting to notice some things, and she's just pretty tech savvy too. And she kind of finds her way through the dark web that there might be this killer who's using the truck driving industry as a cover. Mm-hmm. And Ben, I wish he was on here because he can toil all these stats and data really good. But he found this interesting stat when we were developing the book that the FBI released this information that they believe that right now there could be up to 12 serial killers in the truck driving profession right now, which is really creepy to think about as you're like driving. Like when I go to my parents, since I've been working on this book and I go down to Illinois to visit my family, and like it's just like nonstop truckers, you're just
and there's those big gas stations, the KZs. on the side of the highway that's like in the middle of nowhere. There's nothing around. Like if I died there, like no one would hear.
Yeah.
There was a period in the early 80s where there was like 4 or 5 different movies that to one degree or another had some kind of serious crime connection or murder connected to the trucking industry. One of them had Kurt Russell in them, I remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, Any Which Way But Loose with the gorilla.
Exactly.
I don't think that was it.
But really, it's really good. It's
well,
really
thank
good.
You, man.
I'm just like I said, I'm hooked already. It's like I thought,
thanks.
oh damn, don't tell me. And that last sequence in the first one, oh man, talk about a cinematic moment. It's like, that's
thank you.
seriously cringe-inducing. So
yeah, I hope people. Thank you. Well, cheers. I wish I was having a fancy drink right now, but no, it's been really fun. And he's a novelist too, so I mean, he's got 6 or 7 books under his belt. And this last year, the Loft Literary Center had him do an interview with Stephen King. He was the host, and he got to interview Stephen King. And Stephen King's given him a lot of praise about his novels and stuff. And so being with him right now, working with him is good company. And the guy, he knows how to spin a yarn. And it was just a lot of fun being able to sort of, like you had mentioned my style. Yes. I've always had a cleaner style. It's just sort of been my natural interest in doing things. And I wouldn't say this style isn't clean, but I would say like I've done a few things to change it up. And the biggest part of that is the colorist that I've worked with. His name is Nick Velarde, and I've worked with him on a few Marvel projects, and we really loved working with each other. But with the colorist, it sounds really funny, but it takes a while to sort of gel. They got to get used to your pencils and inks, and you've kind of got to see what they can do. And sure. We just started working on this book at Marvel, and then we got canceled. And it was always like, we were just kind of finding our stride, and they broke us up. And so...
And it really did feel like you gelled, like you were starting to speak the same language.
Yeah, and on this one, it was kind of cool because we had such a good lead time on this book that he could try some things, and we could always say, like, man, this isn't really working that great. And so he got to, thankfully, kind of do quite a bit of round of revisions. Where when you're at Marvel and DC, it's very hard. Like they just are like, we need to hit this print deadline really, really bad.
Yeah.
So like, it's not like, you can screw up, but it's sort of, sometimes it's the best you can do under the time that you have.
Sure.
And we had a pretty good lead time on this one, so we could actually do the best we could do. And he just turned in colors for issue 4, and I'm just so happy with how it looks. There's this deer scene with a semi truck that's really doesn't end well for the deer, unfortunately, but it's I don't know. And I just love that this story takes place in the Midwest because growing up in Illinois, most of my family's from Wisconsin, living in Minnesota. It's not really it sounds funny, but unless it's like Fargo or something like that, it's not always represented in like its natural habitat. And, so, there's pull tabs and meat raffles in this thing. And, it's been fun to kind of do. And I've had a lot of friends from like New York and California that are like, is it really this shit really like that there? And I'm like, yeah. So they had never heard of a meat raffle before. And I'm like,
man.
Yeah, you're missing out. You're really missing out. So
great segue where the thing that made me so excited about Devil's Highway was the style of your art, where it seemed really well suited to the story itself. Do you find that with each, although you have a developed style as an artist, do you feel like each different story that you illustrate tends to be a little bit different?
Yeah, I definitely feel like that's a thing I'm really excited about, is like every new project I kind of want to try to reinvent myself a little bit.
Sure.
Because like it takes a long time to do a comic book, even though it's a short, like Marvel, it can take 4 to 5 weeks to do an issue, and that's 20 pages. And it sounds funny, but it is a lot of time. So like by the time you're done with one, you just kind of want to like, you feel like you've been wearing like the same jacket or the same pair of pants, and you're just like, I just want to try something different.
Oh yeah.
And that's the one thing I love too about I've got friends who like all they do is comics. That's their career. I love being able to jump around and doing like beer labels or posters for stuff, and then trying different things. Cause I don't know, I've always just been curious. Like you'll see the way someone does something in your brain, you can figure it out, but you're like, it's easy to say, like, I know how they did it, but I wonder how I could do it, you know? And so, for Devil's Highway, I'd seen a friend of mine, he added, it's called Zipatone, and it's like where the dots, those little black dots, where it's almost like shading. And I'd never used anything like that on my work before. And I really loved doing it in this book because I felt like it added a grittiness to it without sort of trying to be someone who I'm not, you know? And so I think it added
sort of a retro, almost a slight retro feel to it as well.
Yeah.
That dot pattern there.
Yeah, but then Nick adds these contemporary colors to it that kind of gives like a blend of old and new style that I just really love. And so, yeah, it's been really fun to do that. And like I said, I just, the beer label stuff or the movie poster stuff, I always kind of see something, and I just did a poster for the Wisconsin Chamber Orchestra of all places this weekend.
Sure.
And they wanted something that was like a WPA style approach to it. So
I love those posters from that time. Yeah.
So I actually, years ago, I did something. My wife used to work at the Minnesota History Center, and I did this giant state of Minnesota with all the historical sites on it.
It's a really cool poster, Brent.
That was me.
That was it. Yeah.
Okay. I work for the Minnesota Historical Society.
Do you really?
All of us,
all three of us did.
All of us have worked there or worked there.
You know Joanna Danks by chance?
Yeah.
She comes to my house like all the time.
No way. Tell Joanna I say hi.
Yeah, my wife used to work there for a few years, and then she got a job at an ad agency, and she worked in the marketing department with Joanna, and I can't even remember everybody at the time. But and I did that poster where it's the state of Minnesota with the plane flying over. And they've got, I think this might be the first year they're not using it, but they've been using that for 12 years now or something.
It's a great poster. It's really very appealing too. The style.
We won a couple of awards with that, industry agency awards. They're called, I'll be right back. I'll just grab it. They're called Pushpin Awards.
Cool.
And we got silver. We didn't get gold, but we got silver.
Hey, that's still very cool.
Yeah,
I love it. It's a small world syndrome.
I know.
I have an old tablecloth. I think that once they started using the new, they went through a new branding process recently. But I have one of the old tablecloths with the one that with the logo that you designed.
Okay, cool.
With the intent of making it into one of my boss's boss gave it to me and said, "Hey, can you make this into a blazer?"
Wow, that's awesome.
I think I have enough fabric to make it into a blazer and a skirt. So your work lives on.
I love it. This is like one more thing. Like, but
have Brent's sign down in the lower corner.
Embroidered.
When I had a feeling though, actually, I was going to ask you off camera. I wasn't sure, but I was like, I feel like they might work at the History Center. Yeah. So I loved it. I loved when my wife worked there. It's such a cool place. And when we had our first daughter, I was home. I was daddy daycare while she worked during the day and I worked the evenings. And I would just take her there. And let her walk around and
exhibits, and she could take the buffalo apart.
She went in the tornado. You know, she had a good time.
Well, we might have crossed paths at some point because I worked.
We might have. Yeah, that's crazy.
I was an educator there for a time.
Okay.
And now I'm a manager at the Oliver Kelly farm.
Oh, nice.
So very fun. Cool. Super cool place.
We just went to the Oliver Kelly farm for the first, me at least, when Nicole had been there, but I think 2 summers ago. Yeah.
Okay.
The girls had a great time. They had an awesome time doing that.
I'm very excited for the day when we can be open again.
Yeah.
I miss seeing families and kids, and that was like the best part of working at the History Center was seeing all of the kids that would come through and how they interacted with all this stuff. Like it was such a cool thing and cool uplifting thing to witness every single day is watching people learn.
One more History Center project that I did was I created the History Hound as well.
Oh my God.
The History Hound.
Brent, oh my God. This is the most exciting thing I've ever heard. Okay.
This is a double-edged sword, Brent. I'll tell you stories about the History Hound.
He's right here.
Yes, I have that. I have that in my car.
Do you?
I do. I have that. And then, so I think the History Hound, I think it's brilliant. I think that it's wonderful. I love everything about it. I think mascots are great. And I'm a big fan of Gritty. If I'm from Philadelphia, or I'm from Pennsylvania, and Gritty is like,
yeah,
perfect.
I wish Gritty was around when we had developed him, because I feel like we could have really have done a whole
well,
other
I
deal.
feel like the History Hound is our Gritty in a lot of ways.
For sure. He needs a Twitter account like Gritty.
I adopted the History Hound as my own. It's like they gave me all of the shirts. Like I have a History Hound shirt, like the whole thing. And I've been petitioning our marketing department, being like, you got to make this shit bigger. This is great. We're living in a golden age of mascots. What are you doing? Like, we need to focus on the History Hound. Get him out of the farm.
I know. I always see him riding in the state fair parade.
Yeah.
And Nicole's like, "It's your dad."
I've got a great photo of Gritty helping me paint the World War I America mural that I did.
Are you kidding me?
You mean the History Hound?
Yeah.
Okay, you've met Gritty. Get the hell out of here.
Did I say Gritty? Oh, no. I'm sorry. No, Gritty was not there. No. I stand corrected.
Now you're lying.
The history.
Yes. I was going to say that would be a long trip for Gritty.
Your History Hound came by and put paint on the canvas.
Oh, okay,
which was kind of fun. And then shortly thereafter, Governor Dayton came by. So, it was a cool day.
Well,
History Hound. Dayton, whatever.
I like how we're all connected here. This is
isn't that weird? Yeah.
Hey, while because we're ranging far afield, which is not unusual for us, could you explain to Mary and Scott the thing you did or have done, at least in the past, with your with your daughter's lunch bags?
Okay. Yeah. So I just I have a 9-year-old daughter and I have a 6-year-old daughter. And so when they first started going to school full time, or even not even pre-K and stuff, just for fun, I would I'd draw like a little sketch on it or something like that. And, the teachers and stuff like, wow, that was really cool. And I'm like, oh, and they always liked it, the like little note or something like that. And then, it just kind of became a thing. Like my oldest daughter, I have Josie and Millie, and they would come home with requests, like so-and-so at school wants this. And so it was like a Ninja Turtle or something. And so, or they would be get into a show, and like my oldest daughter loves Goosebumps. Like that's her favorite stuff right now.
Yeah.
And we watched the Goosebumps movies, and then the show is on Netflix from the 90s.
Yeah.
And now she can read the books. So she started reading the books. And so she just would want something from an episode, from the Goosebumps books, or, Wonder Woman, or any of the shows or something like that. So we started doing it, and I can't do them every day, but I do them like once or twice a week when they're in school. Yep. And we ended up just making like an Instagram account called Peanut Butter and Justice was the name of it. But it's fun. Like the teachers like it, and the kids, like, they don't make it home. Someone takes them, or Josie or Millie uses it to as a sandwich, just gets covered on it and stuff. And so, so it's just kind of a fun thing. And it's funny though, because I'll have people be like, I'll pay you to do one for my kid, it's like, no, this is something we like to do and stuff. So it's just kind of one thing for them. So
I bet you'd be doing that nonstop if you open those floodgates.
Yeah, I've had offers, like people have wanted to pay me like for commissions, and I'm like, I want to do it, and like they brought them up to me at conventions, like just a plain sack lunch bag, and I'm like, I don't know, it's kind of weird, but
it's a personal thing for you, right? I mean, it's a thing you do.
Yeah, it's like they don't. You work a lot, and you kind of want to have that thing just for them. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. Although I must admit, several times on Facebook, I would say, God, can you be my dad?
What's one more? I
want Brent to be my dad and drop.
I did want a boy at one point, but now I'm 2 girls deep, and we're done with having kids. And I don't know, girls are great. Girls are so much better than boys.
That's right. I agree.
Yeah, we had some. We can't have people in the house right now, but we have a pool, and so we've had a couple friends over, and man, just like every time I think I get used to it, like the boys just act so different. All like when you see the girls like are just look at them and they're like, what is wrong with them?
Yep.
Like,
yep.
they have so much to get out, so so
That's right.
yeah, I don't know if you had told me before like I had kids that I would have 2 girls and I'd be like, oh God, this can be, but nope, I'm totally glad. So
it's so much simpler.
I grew up with 4 younger brothers, and
yeah.
I think I was the best one.
Naturally, of course.
Of course, you're an unbiased judge too.
The history hound would have told you differently,
Yeah.
One of our episodes is going to have to be Mary's dad's going to have to come on, and he's going to have a lot of explaining to do.
Brent, we have another thing in common in that we were exposed to horror at a very young age.
Oh, really?
Oh man, I think my dad. We had a VHS of Jurassic Park.
Oh, nice.
And my dad showed it to me when I was like 5.
Okay. Yeah.
The whole thing.
Wow.
Without edit.
Look at Scott's face. Look at him. Look at his eyes.
I've asked him about it. Scott. It was baffled.
Yeah.
That just proves.
I'm so lucky. Josie and Millie have both taken, like, when I was young, when they were young, I just was like, hey, it's all pretend. And like Josie is really into learning how things work. Like we actually just watched all the Jurassic Park movies, and like Jurassic World had like this really cool making of, and like she was like wanting to learn how green screen worked and everything like that. And she likes to like explain to all of her friends now when they watch a movie. It's like, well, this part's the green screen, and remember. And I'm like, why don't you just let them enjoy it? Yeah, and I'm like, why don't you just let them enjoy the movie? You don't need to explain.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, but it is cool. Like she and then we went to Illinois to do a visit with my parents recently, and my dad, they have that Me TV channel.
Yeah.
And it has like a lot of really cool, like this Twilight Zone. She got to start watching the Twilight Zone. She loves the Twilight Zone now. Really into it.
Cool.
I'm like, I don't know too many 9-year-olds who are digging Twilight Zone. But then she got Sven Gulli had Daughters of Dracula on this last weekend, and so she got to watch a little bit of it and stuff. But yeah, so she
well, that's cool.
May I recommend I remember the one other like horror thing that stood out to me as a kid. If your kids have never seen the Disney version of the Headless Horseman.
Oh yeah.
So good.
The one with Big
Crosby.
Yeah.
They have not seen that yet. I'm gonna have to find that. Yeah.
It's pretty effective
on Disney Plus. I bet it is.
Well, and we got a DVD of it, and it's basically it was packaged with
Mr. Toad?
Toad's Adventures or something like that. So it's good. That's good stuff. Hey, since we're heading into kid territory, would you mind talking just a tiny bit about breakfast cereal and Monsters?
Oh boy. Yeah. So when I first got out of MCAD, shortly after that, I got a commercial agent for commercial art. And General Mills, obviously being in town, they had stuff for them. So I'd gotten after a few years, I'd gotten like Honey Nut Cheerios cereal box, some other stuff. And then I just remember campaigning and being like, if they ever come at you with anything with the Monster cereals, I want to do it. And they're like, okay, whatever. And I'm like, no, I need to do it. And, and so the first time I actually got to work on them, they did these cool, like you could cut out the back, and it was like these keep out posters that you could put on your room if you were a cool monster kid, I guess.
Yeah.
So it was like Frankenberry had like a big, I forget what his was. It was like a door that was all banged up, and it had like bars on it, and it just said "stay out." And then so I get to do all three of the Boo Berry, Frankenberry, and Count Chocula They're keep out signs that kids could cut out and then, leave off. And so some of them didn't even really have them on there, but some, but like I got to work on them, which was cool.
Yeah.
And then a couple of years went by and I actually did, General Mills had like a 5K fun run thing. And they had me draw them like they were running, and like Boo Berry was riding a bike, which was the hardest shit I've ever had to draw. Like, how the hell does he ride a? Why does he ride a bike? And how the hell does he ride a bike? And it's funny because I never saw it. It ended up on like a runner's like thin sleeve shirt, and I've seen them here and there, and I'm like,
they didn't give you one?
They didn't. They didn't. I was very mad.
They're like collectibles? No, I mean they're seriously collectible.
They are, and that stuff's hard to find, and so
that's criminal.
In-house things with them, and then finally, years ago, they were going back to the retro cereal boxes from the original from the 70s. Yeah. And it's funny because like I just was like, couldn't they just do this in-house? But they're like, no, they want somebody else to redo them all. And so they asked me, and I redid all the original style cereal boxes and drew them in their positioning from back then. But then, obviously like there's a cereal bowl in front of them that blocks half their body. Right. So they just wanted the whole their positioning and everything redone in vector so they could use it for future use.
Sure. And
it's so weird because like it had never been done, and so every time I go and like you see their stuff, because like you can buy like Funkos now with them, and you can buy all this merchandise, and it's like my vector art that I did, and I could kind of tell because it's like I had some weird, even though it's you're basically copying the stuff from the 70s. There's still some line work that I know that is mine, and like you just look for it and you see it, and it's weird. It's weird to see that everywhere.
Yeah.
That must be weird in a 3-dimensional form to see that kind of stuff. And
we got to do Yummy Mummy and Fruit Brood as well, the two rarely used characters. So that was really fun.
What does Yummy Mummy taste like? Has anybody had the chance?
No, haven't had that one.
Sugar.
And mummies, Dave, taste like mummies.
Yeah,
of course.
Yeah. Well, we know that mummies have medicinal tendencies.
They showed up in paintings for a while there too. So.
There you go.
Yeah.
So
with a Mummy Brown. This has been so much fun. Seriously. But we should probably.
Thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate it. Well, I suppose, but I have to say, I would love to come back sometime when we can all get together and watch a movie.
That would be great.
This has been awesome. But
it would be great to, absolutely, to be able at some point in the future to do this in person with each other. And,
we'll do that.
You could bring some of your work and we could take a look at it, and that would be great.
If we can't do it in person, maybe we pick a movie that the four of us would like to tackle, and Brent could be one of our one of our guest hosts for the night. So.
We should bring the History Hound, guys. That's what.
Yes, I'm gonna bring I have my little guy. He's gonna be like a perpetual. He'll be like a ghost in the background in everyone's lives from now on.
Well, I'll be all sad. He's gonna like the Saw movies or something. And I'll be like, oh, fuck you.
Possible. He's an Eli Roth fan. Oh my God.
Yeah.
I was gonna say maybe we go with like. The Witch or something with a historical flavor, but
there we go.
Yeah, we'll figure something out. I think it would be a lot of fun.
Okay.
And honestly, I'm not exaggerating when I say how much we enjoyed The Devil's Highway.
Well, thank you guys.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I will make sure. I'm happy to give you guys a PDF of the issues if you want to go to the store. That's awesome, but I'm happy to.
Dave can get it, and then he can sit on it. But Mary and I'd like to get it as soon as possible.
Okay.
Okay. So they're all right. Hey, fine.
All right.
Well, Brent, this has been absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much for spending some time with us.
Thank you guys so
absolutely.
much. I love the podcast. I try to get up every morning early, and I do about a 3-mile jog, and it's on my rotation of things to listen to.
That's very flattering.
It's really flattering. Wednesday morning will be up, and then this will probably be in about a week. So
okay. Cool.
So, but we'll be in touch with you off and on anyhow.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really enjoy
Alright.
being able to chat with you periodically. So what a treat.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you.
Please come hang out with us in person because that would be
Yeah.
lovely.
That would be great.
Well,
Fire up the
That would be
popcorn
great.
popper, okay?
All
And
right,
we won't
cheers.
make the draw on any of the popcorn bags. I promise.
Okay, that would be fun. That would be fun. Mary, say hi to the people who show up at your apartment tonight.
Oh, I'm sure there's gonna be more.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
All
Well,
right,
good night,
guys.
everybody. Take care. This has been a lot of fun.
Have a good night.
Bye-bye.
See you later.
Bye.
Yeah.
See ya.